My name is Violeta. I was born in Bulgaria, but raised in California. I did my undergrad in London and started my professional career in advertising there as well. I chose to attend INSEAD, starting in France and doing an exchange in the Singapore campus. And now I will be joining BCG in Copenhagen. So what brought me to Europe is the fact that I was Bulgarian and I felt like I wanted to come back to my roots, and it was a little bit cheaper to study at an undergrad level in Europe than in America. And I like the lifestyle and the people, and so I've always felt more at home in Europe. And it's kind of where I see myself establishing my career in the future as well. So before joining the MBA, I worked for a company called Publicis Groupe. They're one of the largest marketing and advertising agencies. I was with them for 5 years, starting off in our London office and then moved to New York. I started off in more traditional media planning and buying, but throughout my career, I became more oriented towards internal consulting as well as some client consulting around digital transformation projects. And knowing that there was some gaps in terms of like financial knowledge and client servicing around certain business topics, that drove me to pursue an MBA. And I'm continuing in a similar vein with consulting afterwards because I really liked the type of work that I was doing before my MBA, but just broadening beyond simply marketing projects into broader transformation projects for clients. I would say there are 3 primary reasons that I wanted to do an MBA. The first one was expanding my network, so not only professionally, but also and meeting people from all over the world and kind of extending the number of people that I know. The second one would be career switching, so kind of being able to transition outside of advertising and marketing, as my whole career had kind of been in a very specific part of an industry. And the third thing was kind of just opening my perspective. So getting to live and work in Singapore, for example. I'd never been to Asia before. So it was also personal development in terms of taking the time to explore new things and really figure out what the next step looked like for me and really kind of pushing on that personal growth story. I think the real value of an MBA comes from the learning that you get from your peers, learning and support, I would say. Meeting people that have such a different perspective from you. So I didn't really know anyone that, for example, that came from family businesses. I didn't know what a search fund was. And I would say, although I took some classes and those classmates would tell me about their personal experience in those industries was way more valuable than kind of what you would read in a textbook, as well as the fact that they have connections. So if you choose to enter that industry, they can easily help you transition. So I think the real value is kind of, there is obviously a textbook and a theory, which I think does provide some value in terms of what you learn in the classroom, but then being able to apply that to the real world and the real practical side of business you learn from your classmates who have worked in that specific industry or in that specific context. So the reason I chose INSEAD is one, because of the 1-year format, and because I wanted to career transition into something that was similar to what I was doing before. I didn't feel that I needed the summer internship in order to get to where I wanted to be professionally. Second was diversity. So when I visited some of these schools, even on their admit weekends, I still felt like everyone there was very America focused in terms of both their work experience, their ambitions, and this general student body. And for me, coming from kind of having lived and worked in so many different countries before INSEAD, speaking 3 languages, it just felt natural to be surrounded with people who were more similar to me. And because I wanted to not live in the US post-MBA. And I would say the third reason was because of the Singapore campus. So while there are other great schools in Europe, I really wanted kind of a cross-continental exposure type of program. And INSEAD was the only one that would also let me live in Asia during the program. I think because I'm going into consulting and INSEAD's network within consulting is extremely strong, I think it was very easy for me to reach out to alumni and connect with people both on campus and off campus and any office around the world that I wanted to when it comes to the major consulting firms. So I think for anyone considering consulting, I think INSEAD is a great place to be because the network is unparalleled. I think beyond that, I've participated in a few alumni events in different cities back when I was living in New York, and now I've of connected with the Alumni Association in Copenhagen. And I like the fact that a lot of them seem to be very active and very kind of close-knit communities. And so I think I really envision the value of my INSEAD branding to come post-MBA. So I think, so far I've had some informal chats and they definitely helped in the recruiting process. But what I'm most looking forward is to kind of continuing to participate in alumni associations in every city that I live in, kind of for the next 20, 30 years. INSEAD's cohort is not small, not big. So if you compare it to, let's say, HBS or Wharton, which are between 850 and 1,000, through to Stanford and MIT that are more in the 300, INSEAD is about 500. But when you break it down across the two campuses, usually in Fontainebleau, you'll have around 300 students, and in Singapore, you'll have around 200. So at any point, you're always with a smaller group comparable to the smallest programs in the US. And I do feel that you kind of have this duality where, for the first 4 months, you're with a close group of friends. And beyond that, you're also broken down into sections, which are between 70 and 80 people. So you do really get broken down into smaller subsects where you can make really close friends. But then the great thing is once the campus exchanges start, that's when you start to really feel the power of the fact that you're part of a bigger program and you start to meet new people kind of halfway through your program, which is also exciting to kind of broaden your network kind of as you're going along your MBA. So I think it's a really nice size in that way, and that like in the beginning it is a little bit smaller and you can start to get to know people on your campus. But then as the year progresses, you can actually broaden out and meet a lot more people. And the fact that you do have kind of previous years on or previous cohorts on campus as well also kind of helps to broaden the number of people that you meet while on the program. INSEAD is really well known for consulting. So I think about 34% of our class is sponsored students and come from MBB as well as some of the other consulting firms. So I definitely think in terms of like the typical student, the majority of them will be either European or a little bit less sponsored in terms of Asia. And they're most likely going to be going back. And so they're just kind of doing internships and exploring different career options during the program, but less heavy in terms of Excel modeling and finance. And even if you look at the statistics in terms of the number of students going into banking and finance, I think it's a lot less than some of the other schools. So we do well in VC and PE, but I think that's also because of people kind of exiting consulting and going into a new transition. I also think, we're increasing in terms of the number of tech companies that are recruiting and students interested in tech. So I was president of the TMT club, and kind of throughout my time, we saw more offerings in terms of digital analytics. We started offering SQL courses. We saw a lot more recruiting from kind of the Amazons and Microsofts of this world, as well as some of the middle tier, kind of smaller scale up companies like Uber and Grab that are coming to campus. So I do think tech kind of is also increasing in terms of the types of classes that we offer, as well as recruiting. And I also think there's a lot of interesting things at INSEAD in terms of family businesses, which I wasn't expecting coming in. So people who come from family businesses, again, mainly from kind of the Asia Pacific region. And some people are kind of going back to those family businesses post INSEAD. So I would also say that's kind of like a typical student profile. So I think beyond simply just the clubs, I think one thing that INSEAD students really excel at is taking initiative and organizing things. So on the one side, you do have the official clubs, which can be broken down into two buckets, which are professional and non-professional. Have professional clubs such as consulting and TMT, which are really geared towards organizing treks, getting your CV books out to potential employers, organizing coffee chats with alumni that work in that industry. And that's really great in terms of people who come from a certain background and want to contribute to the society or to the community, as well as people who are transitioning. You have non-professional clubs such as rugby, which is a really big club on campus. They play once a week, and it's a really great community to be part of. You have things like the wine club as well, which is very strong in France, as you can imagine. But I really think kind of secondary to the official clubs is the initiative that students take to organize squash tournaments, paddle tournaments, personal trips that, you can showcase your home country or you can showcase a certain passion of yours. And I think that's something that probably I've enjoyed the most in terms of INSEAD is I've never played squash. I didn't try stand-up comedy until I joined INSEAD. And there's always somebody at INSEAD that's interested in something. And out of 500 students, you will find at least another 10 students that are interested in the weird, obscure thing that you also like. And so it was just amazing to me how many small groups formed and how powerful those small groups were in terms of spreading something that they were passionate about to the rest of the community. I think the value of clubs is twofold. One is experimentation. So I think a lot of people tried new things while at INSEAD, both in terms of going to career talks in industries that they hadn't really previously considered, as well as trying new sports. I know a lot of people tried stand-up comedy for the first time because of the stand-up comedy club that our year started. I also taught salsa classes, and I know a lot of people don't dance salsa, but they were willing to kind of try throughout the year. And so I think part of it is when you're not in a professional setting and you're not in your day-to-day grind, as you were pre-INSEAD, you kind of have the time and the flexibility to try out new hobbies and new things and really push yourself, which is part of the growth and transformation that happens throughout the program overall. And then the second one, I think, is it is kind of break away from academics and do something that you are extremely passionate about. And that's more for people who kind of have done a certain thing beforehand. And so you do see people who are really passionate about AI or data analytics, and they really want to organize a lot of events and do training on those specific things. And so I think clubs are really important in terms of sometimes in the classroom, you don't really get to show your passions as much as you would like, or, the cases or the subject matters, or there isn't an elective on what the specific thing that you're really passionate about. And clubs is a way and a place where you actually kind of create things that you think will add value to the student body that haven't been kind of pushed on from the kind of administration down. I think the biggest challenges during the program was always prioritizing and finding the time. And I think most people will say this, is you have so many things you could be doing, from academically to socially to trying to sleep or trying to exercise and remain healthy, that, prioritizing what to do when is extremely hard. And so you're always kind of calculating trade-offs in terms of where you're going to invest your time and how you're going to spend each individual period. And especially with a program like INSEAD that's 10 months compared to the normal 2-year program in the US, it really does kind of force you to prioritize early on and check your priorities every 2-3 months to make sure that you're kind of hitting the objectives that you want coming into INSEAD. So I think that was probably the toughest part, was knowing how much you could do and yet having a limited time to actually do all the things you want to. So, again, I think INSEAD's kind of unique in the fact that it is a 1-year program. And so from an investment perspective, that does help. And, I personally couldn't imagine continuing to travel the way that I'm currently traveling for another year. From an investment perspective, I wouldn't have the funds to support a program for 2 years. So I think from an ROI perspective, I'm really happy that I chose INSEAD and the 1-year format. I also think, depending on your personal career goals, the MBA can definitely help. So I think my salary doubled in terms of what I was earning before and now after INSEAD. So from an investment perspective, it definitely helps me personally. And I think in the next kind of 5 to 10 years, I'm going to see a payoff from coming to INSEAD and joining consulting industry post MBA. But again, that is a very unique thing to what I was kind of hoping to get out of it. And I also think ROI, while you can do a calculation, I think ROI is really hard to calculate when it comes to MBAs, because you can't put a price on friendship and you can't put a price on community. And to me, that's what I came to INSEAD to do. And I think back to, some of the friends I made at an undergrad level and now the friends that I've made here. And I think, having that support network and having that group of people that, gives you constant feedback and really supports you and offers a couch whenever you're in Nairobi, you can't really price that. So, if you're looking at a hard ROI, there's ways to fudge the numbers to make it worth your while to do an MBA. But I think you have to really think about it from an intrinsic point of view if you want to do an MBA, and the fact that the ROI is long time and it compounds over time and it only gets stronger kind of the longer you are outside of MBAs. Absolutely no regrets in my decision to come to INSEAD or to do an MBA. Everyone at an MBA program comes from such different backgrounds, and there's always I know people who thought they weren't good enough to get in and now they're on Dean's list. And I know other people who thought, their third language wasn't strong enough to get into INSEAD. And everyone has their certain insecurities and their doubts about both doing an MBA or applying to a specific program. And I think at the end of the day, the admissions committee knows what it's doing, and it's not your job to figure out whether you're good enough or not. I would just always give it your best shot, apply to the programs that you really want to go to, really follow what you want. And I would also say the same thing once you're at an MBA, like once you're actually in the program, kind of don't place any limitations on yourself. Just because somebody comes from 10 years of working at Amazon doesn't mean that you can't be the TMT president. There's no kind of set rule that say you need a certain background or you need a certain kind of thing to achieve what you want. And so kind of going forward constantly and knowing that your classmates and the types of people you will encounter at an MBA are going to be only supportive. They're only going to help you achieve what you want, but you do have to kind of be open about what you do want and kind of chase that thing, be it personal growth or professional career-wise. And I think that's, to me, the one thing that really, really kind of blew me away at INSEAD was how supportive I was. People who came to me and said, I know that you know the answer to this in the finance class. Why didn't you speak up? You should be speaking more. Or when I was doing case prep, and I was always afraid to ask the sponsored consultants to kind of help me because I knew they were doing 20 practice cases a week, and they would kind of force me to do cases with them because they knew I needed the support. And so I think, you will get an insane amount of support in an MBA program. And I think take advantage of that to really go after what you want, and, just be confident both before and after. Not everything will work out. I can almost guarantee not everything will work out the way you intend it to. But it will all turn out fine. I mean, if I got a job and survived COVID, I'm more or less certain that you will also survive your MBA year.